Thank you very much for joining us this morning. As Jennifer said, I put up the objectives of the session today. Our goal is to hopefully touch on a much sort of a 101 level, so we kind of touch on a lot of different areas. We're not going to drill down into too much. Obviously, we're a little limited for time. But the idea is hopefully with a little bit of an appetizer in a couple different sections, you're going to have a much better understanding. Our goal is to expand this out, drill down into certain sections as we move through the project. So today is, as I say, it's an appetizer. Hopefully we'll have the entree into the fall in both webinar and in-person series. So just wanted to let you know that these are the objectives. I'm sure you've all read them by now. I don't need to read them off for you. And we'll get started on where we want to go today. So this is the reality for many of us. For any of you that are younger, this is your reality as well. I'm sure you can't live without your phone, and we know that the internet world is a big part of what goes on. The side effect, well, this is an outcome. This is an outcome of a lot of things. This is an outcome of a lot of inactivity that's gone on. But a lot of that has been caused by lost opportunity, and I'll talk more about that as we move through the session today. But one of the positive things about this is we know kids can be on task, and you've all seen kids be on task around their technology. So if we can just get them moved over a little bit from being on task all the time on this, I think there's hope. So really we're looking at a different environment today. A lot of unstructured play is gone. You may see pockets of it here and there in communities around the country, your local cul-de-sac where families have carved out a nice little niche for themselves where they feel it's safe. A big part of this is public safety. A lot of people think the white panel van is around the corner, and it's for some that's a real fear. But I think it's probably gone a little too far, and because of that, kids don't have the roaming freedom that we all had when we were kids. We see a lot of built spaces that are just not used near as much. A lot of playgrounds. There's even kids that don't even know how to play in a playground. So it really is challenging. There's no doubt about that the landscape is different than it was 10, 20 years ago. So we have to approach it differently. Walking to school, pretty much eradicated. They've done research on this particular area. They worked out on average it's about 2,000 steps a day gone. So physiologically, there's a significant factor around that. For a person about this guy's size, it's about 100 calories a day on 2,000 steps. 200 days a year, do the math. It's about 4 or 5 pounds a year. And then on top of that, you lose all the great decision-making opportunities that kids have when they do have that little bit more freedom, a little bit less structure, where they have to be a bit more independent. And then, of course, come home when the street lights are on. Don't hear this too much anymore. Again, generally a public safety issue. You may have heard of the issue in Maryland recently where the 2 young kids were walking home from the park that was about a mile away from their house, and someone called 911, and the police were called, and their parents were arrested, or charged, actually. So it's a bit of a different landscape today, as I say. The research is pretty clear around movement and activity, and we know that sport and physical activity are vehicles for movement. That you do get a better brain, better muscle, better bone, better heart, better body, better social life, better psychology, lower burden on the healthcare system, and you are more productive. The research is very compelling, but the good news story does not seem to be compelling enough for people to make change in their behavior. So inactivity continues to grow. And the outcomes of inactivity-based disease, continues to be a major concern. It is now taken over as the largest burden on our society as far as the healthcare system goes. So when we talk about physical literacy, what exactly are we talking about? It's a fairly new term. Lots of people are throwing literacies in front of a whole bunch of different words, trying to figure out what's going on. How are things, what does this really mean? Well, its direct definition, the latest definition, and there are a number out there, just so you know, with literacy, which is about 105 years old in Canada, there's about 14 definitions for literacy, and it's been around for a long time. Physical literacy is relatively new, so there's going to be lots of feeling out. But in its basic premise, Physical literacy is the motivation, confidence, physical competence, knowledge, and understanding to value and take responsibility for engagement in physical activities for life. In its simplest essence, it is the ability, the desire, and the motivation to be out there and be active in a variety of environments. And we'll talk more about that as we move along here. So when we talk about physical literacy, how do we compare it to other literacies? And we call these the skill-based literacies. In the school system today, literacy and numeracy are a high priority, to the point where lots of other stuff is kind of pushed off the table, which is unfortunate. So with literacy, we know that you have to learn your ABCs, and from there you can form words, and from there you can construct sentences. And then you can write a lovely birthday card to your mom or dad, or perhaps a rewrite of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So you do need to follow this pathway and learn the steps to be able to be literate. And as you well know, with literacy, it's not an endpoint. Depending on how much you have a certain amount of literacy through your life, you're either more literate or less literate. It is over the life course, over your lifespan. With numeracy, the same thing. 1, 2, 3s. From there, we can form fractions and solve equations. Go to engineering school, get sponsored by Red Bull, and jump from space. Hey, pretty marvelous. But again, it's a purposeful pathway that you need to follow. With music, do, re, mi, scales, scores, and you become a big star. I think we all know that Justin Bieber is a big Canadian music star. And again, followed a pathway of music literacy. With physical literacy, no different. You need to build your movement vocabulary. And a lot of us have heard the term FMS, fundamental movement skills. That is a contributor to your movement vocabulary, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. Once you have sort of filled up, you start filling your bucket full of the individual skills. What you do is you learn how to sequence those skills. And once you learn how to sequence skills, then you can do various tasks. And eventually, you might be able to get to the point where you can perform the pas de chat in Swan Lake, or you may be able to go out and play games with your friends. What this does is it provides you with the skills, with the competency to be able to perform. And when I use the word perform in your basic life course. But we know clearly that if you don't have these things, you will stop. And that is part of the challenge that we see today, is that, as I talked about previously, with all that organic component gone, the playing outside with your friends in your neighborhood, walking to school, all those things gone, we have carved out great opportunities for our kids to develop their movement vocabulary. So it puts a lot more pressure on the school, on the rec department, on the sport club, to be able to fill that void. And so that's part of the challenge of today. So when we talk about fundamental movement skills, what are we talking about? When we're talking about the body, and with balance and agility, coordination, I think these are things that you all recognize. These are things that again, you see various kids, various adults, various youth who have various levels of these abilities. With locomotor skills, we're talking about running, jumping, swimming, sliding, skating, in all types of environments. And then when we're talking about object manipulation, sending, receiving, dribbling, striking, this is just a small snapshot of the type of movement skills that one would be doing. Here's some more. And they take on all shapes and sizes. And really, no different than what we're doing with math and language arts in school. We provide lots of opportunity for our kids to be exposed to these particular learning opportunities. With movement, we have probably lost some of those opportunities. And because of that, we have to make sure that when we do have these learning opportunities, that they are purposeful, that they are skill-based, and most importantly, they need to be fun. There's no doubt that probably today with physical activity, it's kind of been dumbed down. As long as the kids are moving, it's okay. Well, unfortunately, and we'll talk more about this as we move along, a lot of kids are not moving and learning a more diverse group of skills. It's also important to move in a variety of environments. Most of our movement tends to be on the ground. We call that land-based or ground-based movement. But we also want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be moving in the water, moving in Canada, moving on ice and snow for sure. And then, there's a much smaller group that actually get to move in the air, in both indoors and outdoors. So it's really important that we provide a diverse range of opportunities in a diverse range of environments. This is going to make things more rich and more opportunistic. So I think now what we're looking at is a poll that Jennifer's put up. Maybe take a moment and you guys can work through this poll. Basically, what we're looking for you to do is what is most important, do you think, in your world? If you work in the aquatic world, maybe water's more important, but just get you to take a second and kind of rank what you see as more important in the work, the practice that you partake in, whether it's sport, whether it's recreation, whether it's school, whether you work in a neighborhood house, other community delivery agencies. So it's great to see you guys are all polling away. Nothing like voting, and then we're seeing lots of different pieces coming up. So so once that poll is done, that's great. So I'm just going to keep jabbering away here in the background. So just to recap, it is important that there is a diversity. And so we're going to talk more towards the end of the webinar today around creating environments for kids to be able to have a variety of opportunities, and then how best do we provide that environment, sort of integrate physical literacy opportunities into your practice, into your work, into your programming. So creating a physically literate society. This is the model that's been created by Canadian Sport for Life for development of skills. In this particular situation, it starts at the bottom. It's a stage-based approach. It's not a chronological or age-based approach. Active Start, Fundamentals, Learn to Train tend to be what we call the physical literacy learning space. It's not exclusive to here, because you can see we clearly, with the yellow arrow, is you can actually develop your physical literacy over your life. And we clearly know that people have the opportunity to become more physically literate throughout the life course. Stroke victims have shown to us that the brain is plastic. It allows us to rebuild it and re-engage. So you can teach an old dog new tricks. And I would focus on a specific part of our population right now, our aging baby boomers, who are all now, many of them starting to retire, and looking for opportunities for physical engagement. And how do we get these people engaged in a way that's going to be rich and fulfilling for them? So it's always part of that programming opportunity. As we move up the rectangle, if you look off to the left, there's this very small green, blue section there. That is the performance section. It's a very small part of the system. It gets lots of press because high performance athletes, whether they be professional or amateur, the media likes to report on that, but it is a very small part of the system. It's important to build a good base if anybody wants to go down that performance pathway. The bulk of the model is really built around being active. So it's maybe being competitive for life, active for life, fit for life. There's lots of different terms we can use. But the idea is that we have an opportunity for people to find their place, to find their space in the tent where they're comfortable in doing what they're doing. To the right at the bottom there, we have first contact and awareness. That's for disability, persons with disability. We have two types of groups here. We have people who have an acquired disability. Those would be the Rick Hansons, the Terry Foxes of the world, who were athletes or active or fit prior to their acquiring their disability, and then continued on being active with their disability. And then we have people born with a congenital disability who would be spina bifida or another cerebral palsy, but they all have their own physical literacy journey. It all is shaped for them. So we need to be able to look at opportunities for people as they move forward. We tend to talk about sport and recreation as being the primary areas of physical literacy, but it's not. It's much more than that. It certainly spills off into the performance arts. If any of you have seen Cirque du Soleil, I would say that they're probably some of the most physically literate people in the world. Dance, a huge amount of physical competency and a rich movement vocabulary for these people. When we talk about vocational, lots of physical jobs where lots of physicality is needed. Any construction site, you better be able to know how to throw and catch if you want to get that hammer that's coming towards you. Lots of different things where it is important to have physical skills and to have a refined level of physical skills. Activities of daily living, again, as right now in taking care of our homes, or even as we get a little bit older and we maybe start to reduce or change our activities, it's important that we have lots of different options. And then in injury prevention, it's an interesting area right here, is that there has been some studies done that talks about more physically literate people, more skilled people actually build an injury preventive component to themselves and help reduce injury as they move forward. So it has a protective component. You build your durability, your resiliency, which is an interesting component, because I think one of the challenges we have within activity-based disease is I think our resiliency, our durability is lower. Hence, we're more susceptible to type 2 diabetes and other types of inactivity-based disease. So as I've suggested already, we really feel that physical literacy is the gateway to active participation. It is important that if we develop physical literacy in people through sport and physical activity and other types of movement, that they will develop confidence, and from there, with confidence, they will be more apt to try new things, to do things, and be motivated to do those things. So a more physically literate person really does have more opportunity and more motivation to be active and participate. So when we talk about delivery sectors, they're all from various areas. There are lots of organizations in Canada that have adopted the term physical literacy. Canadian Parks and Rec Association, it's embedded in the Canadian Sport Policy of 2012. PHE Canada in the physical education space. Big organizations in the United States, Shape America as an example, High Five. And even on the corporate side, RBC Learn to Play. If any of you are involved with any RBC projects, RBC has really embraced the physical literacy movement, if I can call it that. And it's now a cornerstone of a lot of the granting they're doing around physical activity and sport-based programming. This is the interaction that's built around the sectors, if we call the big four sectors: recreation, health, school, and sport. In many communities, there are lots of people doing good work who don't necessarily collaborate with others in other sectors. And we're also starting to see many communities that are starting to see the benefits of working together to develop that seamless integration of physical literacy development for our kids in particular. We tend to focus on kids and youth, but it really pertains to everybody. In recreation and in sport, your customers have to show up. They have to show up to participate. In school, most of the kids are there, small group of homeschool kids. So there are lots of interaction opportunities. We need to make sure that those opportunities, A, are as enriching as possible, that they're as fun as possible, and that we create an environment for whoever's participating, children, youth, or adults, that they have a desire to come back and continue to participate and be active in their own way. And I think when we see opportunities for the three in particular to coexist and to work together, we see a more productive citizenry that can come out of that concept. Because now we start to use collaborative resources, we start to share, because we know in the recreation space, recreation has facilities, they have trained staff, but again, they don't have all the customers. With sport, they generally don't have facilities, but they utilize the recreation-based facilities. They have trained staff, generally mostly volunteer, and again, like recreation, they don't have all the customers. And it's hard for them to deliver during the day, mostly in the evening and on the weekend. And in school facilities, and in a lot of cases, they don't necessarily have the trained staff, because we know in many elementary school settings there aren't PE specialists. Some do have them, some don't, but we're seeing some gaps there. And then health is mostly around health care. It's not really about delivering health, quality health, or a higher level of health. It's focused around really keeping sick or almost sick people alive, and it does a great job in doing that. But we need to start to turn our focus and look at where we can collaborate and be together on this a little bit more. So let's talk a little bit about physical literacy assessment. It's become more on the forefront in the last couple years. There are a number of tools out there, whether it's the CAPEL tool for Mark Tremblay's lab in Ontario, whether it's the Play tools coming out of Dr. Dean Crear's lab in Winnipeg, whether it's the PHE Passport for Life tool. There's a number of them that are out there that are starting to give us a better indication of what is the status, what is the physical literacy status of individuals. Well, in this particular case, we're going to talk about the Play tools. Play tools are an interesting situation. How many of you, I think you can raise your hand, I think you can, or at least put a note in the text box. How many of you have used the Play tools before? Has anybody here ever used Play tools? It'd be interesting. Okay, good. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Nice to see. You're all on the ball right now. Excellent. So the Play tools are an interesting package. I'm just going to go through them real quickly here. Play Fun is a comprehensive formative assessment of 18 skills and tasks. It's not exhaustive, but it's representative of a good grouping of movement competency as we're looking at how people move. We'll talk more about Play Fun in a sec. Play Basic is a scaled down version of Play Fun. It focuses on 5 skills and tasks. Those are the ones that are there. Run there and back, and hop would be locomotion. Overhand throw would be upper body object manipulation. Ball kick would be lower body manipulation, and walk backwards heel to toe would be balance. So it kind of gives you a good snapshot of what's going on with people. And Tara, thank you for letting us know you're new. We hope that we can actually get you more engaged around this. So we'll talk more about at the end how you can. With Play Coach, Play Parent, Play Self, they're questionnaires. They're questionnaires that are specific to the individuals in the title. So the Play Coach tool can be used by the coach, the teacher, the instructor, whoever, who's been working with the child or the individual for a while, and they give their perception of how they move. With Play Parent, it's interesting because Play Parent, if you gave it to one parent and the other parent, you may not get the same assessment perception of the child. Moms and dads don't always, or parents don't always necessarily agree. And then Play Self, which is an interesting tool, is a self-assessment by the child or individual themselves, and it's actually provides some interesting information. I'll give you more information on that in a sec. And then Play Inventory is basically a sheet that it's basically a sheet of about 100 activities that you would have somebody fill out and ask them over a 3-month period, how many of these activities have you done? And if you see that there's 1 or 2 activities being done, is that a diverse enough movement opportunity that's there for individuals? So it's just all these tools together actually provide sort of a 360-degree view of the individual. So they can be valuable, and I find that they're most valuable in program evaluation. So if you put the Play tools in the hands of somebody who's delivering programs, they start to get a much better perception of what Johnny or Janie actually know. And it helps them in their program evolution and their delivery to be able to make sure that, oh my gosh, I didn't know Johnny couldn't do that. Because and we'll talk more about that towards the end of the webinar today when we talk about integrating physical literacy, is what do you need to do to make sure that your programming is providing a rich, complete environment for whoever is participating. So Play tools use what we call a visual analog scale. This is the scale here. It's broken into two pieces, developing and acquired. If you look at the midline that sits there, that white vertical line between developing and acquired, if you look to the left of that line, what you would say there is that the individual does not have the skill yet, so they're still developing it. To the right of that midline, you would have acquired, they have the skill and they're starting to refine it more. And then if you go in down a little further, you can see that under developing, we have initial and emerging. So again, it's a progression. It's a progression from, on the far left, I do not know the skill at all, to the far right, at the end of proficient, best in the world. And it's really kind of an interesting component, because what it does is, and I think you all have had this experience if you've worked with people who move, is you understand when you see good movement or efficient movement. And likewise, you also understand and recognize when you see inefficient or poor movement. And so what the scale allows you to do is monitor over time the progression of whoever you're working with. Okay, so it's important that the visual analog scale is used a lot in research. It's scientifically valid, but it's also quite flexible, and it's important to understand that. So if you go to the PLAY website, it's play.physicalliteracy.ca. It'll come up again at the end, play.physicalliteracy.ca. There are rubrics for each of the 18 skills and tasks. So there's a rubric for initial in hopping, and for emerging in hopping, and for competent. And what does it look like? What does it look like? What sort of skills or components are made up in being able to hop emerging or hop proficient? And I'm just citing one skill. So if you go into and look at that, you'll see some interesting pieces around that. We're not going to spend a lot of time on play today, but I just wanted to give you a little snapshot. For some of you that have done it already, you know what I talk of. It's also important that with the play tools, that we're not only measuring their competence with their skills, the individual skills, we're also trying to assess their confidence. And again, when you work with people, with individuals, with kids, that when you ask a kid to do something and they look at you like deer in the headlights, you know that their confidence is probably not very high. So there is actually a confidence scale on here as well. And all we indicate is whether it's low or not. And so a check mark would be a low, and you kind of move on. And all that is for you as the programmer to be able to make a note of that. So guess what? With Johnny, I need to probably focus a little bit on that to build his confidence. That's all it is. And then with comprehension, same thing. They need to understand the terms. What is hopping? What is jumping? What is skipping? What is galloping? What are all these things? Because we know that in numeracy and literacy, we have an expectation that they understand the terms. So here's the Play Fun sheet. You can see 18 skills and tasks. It's a little small, maybe a little difficult to read them. Here's the visual analog scale right beside the skills, confidence scale, comprehension scale. So if you go to the play.physicalliteracy.ca website, there's a number of webinars and descriptors that you can get more information on that. So it's we built some pretty good tools in there to sort of get you going if you want to go. Just wanted to bring your attention of an interesting study that we're doing in Ontario and Ontario After School, Ministry Supported After School, working on about 400 sites with about 20,000 kids. It's been going on now for a little over a year. Last year we did an evaluation, time A, time B. So time A in January, time B in May, and this is what we found. So for everything, all the blue lines that go to the right, those are males, and for all those blue lines that go to the left, those are females. So I think if you had a first blush at this, what we have found is that the physical literacy skills of the boys is considerably higher than it is of the girls, which is a concern. These blue lines should actually all be into the middle, and it should be equality. It's a concern. It's a concern, and this was 5,000 kids in Ontario Ministry After School Care. Across the province of Ontario, and so it's a bit of a canary in the coal mine for us. You're right, Victoria. We need to fix this. There's no doubt about that. Now, I also want to tell you that everybody's physical literacy is not very high. Generally, the sweet spot for most of this data was about age 6 to 13. There were some kids on either side of that, but that was the bulk of it. And it is a good sample. And we're actually coming through time, we're just doing time B right now for this year's assessment. We'll have over 10,000 kids this year. So like I say, it's a bit of a warning sign, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention more than anything else. And I don't want to minimize what I just said to you. I just want you to be aware of it, and then we can continue the dialogue beyond the webinar. I want to bring your attention to creating a quality experience for people. As we all know, High Five, created in Ontario. We work very closely with High Five. We value the quality assurance component in the delivery of programming in this particular space, focused on ages 6 to 12, that we want to provide a supportive environment for these kids. So it is important that High Five is part of your training module. I believe in Ontario Recreation, most everybody has to be High Five or is High Five, so it is an important piece. These are the key principles of High Five: that there is a caring adult, that we support friends and play, that we work towards developing mastery, which I think is such an important thing, and participation. The programs need to be developmentally appropriate, they need to be safe, and they need to be welcoming. And I think that's really important. Those are key components of any quality program, and we're going to talk more about quality programs now. And research really does show that a positive experience in sport and recreation as a child, they're more likely to stay active for life. It's one of the key components in developing this. So when we're talking about integrating physical literacy into your programming and creating that physical literacy experience, what are we talking about? Well, we're really talking about each of the different sectors, because it might be done a little differently in recreation and in sport or in school and after school. So just to give you an example, what we're seeing sort of happening right now, and some of you may be experiencing this yourself, is that we're seeing where some people at the beginning of an activity or are integrated into activity or beginning of a sport practice, they're actually doing some what we call fundamental movement components to sort of build the skill piece before they apply the technical aspect of what may be a sport practice or an activity. It's almost like we have to do this remedial work at the beginning to get our kids' skill up. And this is the new environment that we're living in, is it because kids have less opportunities. When we do have them, we need to make sure they have the foundational pieces first, and then we build on those foundational pieces. A lot of kids who don't get the foundations, we wonder why they can't do a movement further up the chain, so to speak, as part of the progression, because they have not had enough pieces of that progression. Tara, to your question about quality, I think when we talk about quality, we're talking about making sure that all the components of High Five are addressed, and we're also making sure that the quality of the design of the program and the delivery of the program are effective in making sure that they will achieve the outcomes that we want to have. It's important that we develop that movement vocabulary, fill the bucket with those skills, those FMS skills, and other skills, because FMS is not exhaustive. There's lots of smaller, finer skills that are involved in there as well in movement through life. And so it's really important that we do understand this. And as we said earlier, movement vocabulary and physical literacy are really the gateway to being physically active, to giving kids the best chance to have to reach their potential in whatever that is, because we clearly know that if we're in a setting where, say, dodgeball is being played, it's clearly not a good activity when you have a diverse set of kids, because the kids who are more skilled will dominate the kids that are not skilled, and nobody wins in that situation. That is not a quality environment. You want to create an environment that's inclusive and that's going to be supportive of all the kids in them developing what they're doing. So when we're talking about the design of the program, it's important that we teach beyond just form. And so the most clear example, or one of the most recognizable examples, here this young guy is throwing a ball here, is probably throwing. Most of the time when we're assessing throwing, we're assessing the overhand throw like somebody's the pitcher in baseball. And we know that the only person that really throws that way is the pitcher in baseball. And that throwing happens in so many different other contexts. So we need to address the diverse movement components of throwing and hopping and skipping and catching and all these different things. We need to provide diverse opportunities around that. And then along with forming the skill and diverse opportunities, we need to provide those opportunities to sequence those things together so that there are activities that start to connect the dots and start to make them so that I have the skills over here and now I'm starting to paste them together and I'm starting to sequence these skills together so that at the end of the day now, so those are my sentences. I have my words, I'm putting those words together and I'm forming sentences and paragraphs. So we need to teach the terminology so that the kids understand as through the progression of learning how to move, that they understand what movements, what you're saying to them to do the movement. We need to teach them how to modify things. So we know that in lots of activities in sports, there's interaction between individuals, and I may have to modify my movement because there's somebody out there interacting with me. So if it's a team sport game or if it's an activity that involves interaction between the two, I need to be able to change direction. I need to, I was going this way. Oh, I got to try and modify that. I got to move over here somewhere. So all these sort of things, this diverse opportunity is created in the activities, and it's purposeful. It's not just let's throw them all out there and we hope it happens, because no different than dodgeball, what tends to happen is the kids who can move better, move more, move better, continue to build on that. The kids who can't move as well generally will work to their lowest common denominator. So how do we build the skill sets of those kids that aren't moving as well and need more skills, more skill confidence laid down? And then social cohesion, big piece. If we do large-sided games all the time, we really don't take advantage of building social cohesion. So we need to do small-sided games, small-sided activities to give kids opportunity to be more engaged. So clear example is we see some programs where you may have this long line of things going on. Well, a long line is not going to work real well because kids are standing around waiting. Let's have a bunch of short lines, small-sided, or let's have circuits where kids can go to various parts and there's just a couple of them in various places and they can move around. If you give them choice to, for the first session, they get to go out, it becomes more inclusive. Those are just some small examples of how you start to make the environment more enriching for the kids. This particular section can be a 3-hour lecture unto itself, just scratching the surface here a bit with you here today. Some other components of quality physical literacy environment, mimicry. Mimicry is one of the main ways that kids learn, but you need to be able to provide examples of where kids can move and copy within reason. If we show them very high level movements, they're not going to be able to mimic that. So we need to be, if we're going to use mimicry as a teaching tool, we need to provide them with an opportunity where they can be comfortable and move through that activity. So things like line dancing, where they're all moving together, or in a bunny hop line, or so on and so forth, where they feel comfortable that they're all kind of moving together. They have that great example and they can copy the other kids around them. Like, oh, here we go. No, I think I've just got one more slide here. But the equipment piece as well. The idea that equipment doesn't need to be complicated, but it needs to be diverse. There needs to be a reasonable amount of opportunities, and it needs to be appropriate size for kids. And if we could, things are not lost in one just on equipment. Some people are very creative at being able to make quality environments without a lot of equipment. But the nice thing about, say, throwing beanbags versus balls, beanbags don't bounce around. You have to chase them around all over the place, which again may be part of the activity or not. But it just is an example. And then, of course, terminology. Just want to reinforce this one again. It's very important that we reinforce the teaching of terminology to kids so that they understand it. Because in numeracy and literacy, we have an expectation they understand the terms. It's no different. Reinforce mimics, mimicry, but they may not, because they mimic, they may not understand what the terms mean. They need to know the difference in terms of just hop, jump, and so on and so forth. So just want to give you a few key websites here where most of you may be quite familiar with some of these things. Canadian Sport for Life, lots of resources there, tend to be more sporty resources. Lots of different examples, videos, some interesting videos. That's really, it's a sport and activity based site, really quite good there. The physicalliteracy.ca website, lots of good stuff around physical literacy, community-based information, really quite good. And then the play.physicalliteracy.ca is the Play website. And one of the nice things about the Play website is you can actually register as a leader, and you can enter your participants, and you can enter your data from Play Fun, Play Basic, and Play Self. And that's where the after-school leaders are actually recording all their data. It's quite a nice tool if you do want to use it for monitoring over time. Active for Life, tons of activities at Active for Life, tons of activities. And then PHE Canada is an education piece. So here we go. Another question from Jennifer, and type away there. And we're seeing lots of different things. So what area of PL are you most interested in? So play fun, fundamental move skills, so important. Love to see the progression. Yeah, absolutely. One of the most compelling things, a number of years ago, about 3 years ago, I did a project in a local school district. And one of the teachers, we actually, what we did was we put a physical literacy mentor in a classroom setting inside their PE space, so working with a generalist teacher. And one of the comments, we did a survey afterwards, and one of the comments that came out of this was, first of all, I want to tell you, I hate sport. And there is a large number of people that don't like sport for a variety of reasons. But she said, what I did find out in going through this program, and the idea that learning their fundamental movement skills is going to be so important for their life, for their quality of life. So it was a very compelling aha moment for that teacher to find out that finding the sport and physical activities as the opportunity for them to be active is really important. Your example about immigrant children or new Canadians is really good. Part of what we need to work through is helping people understand and getting engaged who are from other cultures. Canadian Sport for Life is starting to do more and more work in this area because we do need to engage. I don't mean to be simplistic in saying that they need to learn the terminology if they don't even understand English. Obviously, that's a much more, complicated process. I think that again, it's a progression, and so we need to. And of course, Patty's come up with a solution, a great mimicking. Kids could copy everything. I mean, that's what's very interesting about things like, Right to Play internationally. Right to Play does some very interesting work in using sport and physical activity as a mobilizer in countries. And here you're teaching each other. You're throwing great stuff out there, and games ideas to implement fundamental movement for sure, social cohesion. So lots of good stuff. So we're really, we really want to emphasize that we're not asking anybody to do anything more than what you're already doing. We're asking you is to possibly evolve, refine, change, adjust, whatever words we want to use, programming that you may be doing if you're not particularly focused in this physical literacy area. And if you need more information, either contact Jennifer, who you already have contact information, or I will type in my email address in the box, and feel free to send me a note. In my role, I actually manage 5 projects in the province of Ontario right now, and a number of them are based around play and physical literacy and various components in communities. So there's a real opportunity to find out what's going on in various communities around Ontario. So we may already be in a community that you're in, or we can certainly help support you in what you're doing. But the how-to stuff is starting to become really interesting. Like how do we integrate this, implement this into our programming in a way that's going to be that's going to be beneficial. It's all about Kaizen, right? Is constant improvement, wanting to make yourself and your programming better. So Jennifer's rolling out another poll here. So this is more of a philosophy thing. It's and there's no doubt that that you all have your own reasons that motivate why you do what you do, work in the area you work, and I think it's important that as we're doing these things, how do we how do we do what we are doing better, but also how can I collaborate with somebody that's maybe not in my sector, in my community? So if you work in the recreation department, I mean, is there an opportunity to work more closely with the local school? And I would guess that many of you are parents, and so you may be involved with the school already. How do I connect better to local sport clubs? And when we think about it, recreation and sport, intimate connection. Recreation departments own or run almost all the sport facilities in a community, and sport groups use them, and so that they're intimately connected. How do we improve that relationship and make it better for people? So just reinforcing the websites here, and as I say, Canadian Sport for Life, lots of sporty information. Physicalliteracy.ca, a lot more information. You'll actually find information. There's an interesting piece there called Movement Preparation on the physicalliteracy.ca website, which really talks about building a physical literacy movement preparation component for your activities that you can actually integrate into your activities, be they sport or recreation or school or whatever. So there's an opportunity there. As I said, the play.physicalliteracy.ca website is to support the play tools. Active for Life, if you look for the mega document in Active for Life, you will run into the mother lode of activities that is situated there. So there's lots of stuff going on there. And then PHE Canada is a phys ed school-based resource piece, but lots of stuff around physical literacy. Want to thank you very much for your time today, and appreciate you taking the time to sit and listen, and also provide some valuable feedback through your through the text box. And I certainly have a few minutes here. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And as I say, I've put my email address there. You step away from this meeting today and there's something that I may be able to answer or assist, or let me know what community you're in. Yeah, and actually, as Jennifer says, we can certainly email back from there. And Michael says, what is your experience with PL and youth? Youth engage. I own 3 of them myself, 13, 17, and 20. I think this is a critical area where we need to ensure, especially with girls and women, young women, that there is an opportunity for them to have more confidence around being able to move. We know that from elementary school to high school, it is really tough for a lot of girls and women to be excited and engaged around physical education in particular, and movement in themselves. And I also think that there's a huge opportunity around activity and movement to be a preventive and a relieving factor for things like mental health. The focus in the high school space right now is starting to really shift towards mental health and the mental health of our teenagers. So there's definitely some good work that has to go on there. Resources for children with autism. We're actually working on an adaptation of play for children with autism, and it is happening right now. It probably is half a year to 3/4 of a year away, but autism is certainly, I actually just did a presentation to the Canucks Autism Network 10 days ago. Lots of opportunity here to engage around that. More information to come out in the not too distant future. So it is on the radar and being addressed right now. The workplace injury prevention angle is it is a super compelling argument because, again, the good news is not a good enough story, which I find interesting. It's like we have to wait for somebody to drop dead in the schoolyard or something before we actually do anything. I think that injury prevention, the building the durability or the resiliency of our citizens, should be a minimal standard of what we should be doing, and unfortunately, it is not even a maximal standard. So it is important. Another question on the autism and the disability piece. We're currently working with the Canadian Paralympic Committee to develop an adaptation of play as well for persons with a disability. We're still in the early days of that, so that work is starting to happen, and it will be interesting to see as that starts to roll out. But if you go to the Canadian Paralympic Committee website, they are starting to develop some interesting tools around developing physical literacy with persons with a physical disability. So do go there. They have been building some stuff and have some resources available there. Okay. Yeah, and any other questions? Could the link be granted in June so we can incorporate into our... Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think the staff training piece for summer camps is a great situation. You're usually getting all these young people engaged with their summer job. The more they understand around physical literacy and making those environments a little bit more constructive. Again, the kids are tearing around like mad people. But if we can make those experiences just a little bit more skill building and purposeful, and understand that's not taking away the fun. Okay, it's making it so that we're getting a better outcome out of the same experience, and making more kids feeling more included who may not feel as confident to move. I think that's really important that we do have that. Yeah, training the trainer for sure. Actually, I'm in Ottawa week this Monday, the 25th. I'm actually doing a train the trainer session on the play tools for Ottawa Recreation Department. And then we're doing a play training session. We're doing a play training session in Cambridge on June 6th. So there are sessions that are out there, and these sessions are actually free of charge because they're part of a project that we're doing with Brock. So if you do live in the local area, do contact me. So Cambridge, June 6th, Ottawa, May 25th. The details are with the community, so we're not widely advertising them, but because you're on here today, there's a Brock. There you go. Well, Ken Lodwick is my project partner, and of course Jamie Mandigo is quite involved as well. So there's nothing scheduled in Toronto right now. Doesn't mean there won't be, but our goal through this play research project is to build the capacity in local communities. So we're working with 8 communities right now, and so there is some opportunity. If you want to email me back, we can maybe have a dialogue, connect you. You may, for those June 6th and May 25th, it might involve a little travel for you. We will probably have another one or two sessions happening at the end of the summer towards September in the Toronto area, whether it's North Toronto, York region is probably a likely landing spot. We're doing some stuff with the York region in the fall, so there is some opportunities. Again, want to thank you very much. Appreciate your time today, and appreciate where you work and how you work, and hopefully you will take a little bit away from today and feel good about that. Thanks very much.
Hey Drew, it's Jen. Thanks so much for the presentation. I just want to say a few things before we take off. Just first, I noted Rebecca asked if we could get the recording a little bit earlier. I will do my best to have that to you early June or mid-June. And also I wanted to mention that through this grant, there's another training that's being developed for the fall, and it will move
Excellent.
through physical literacy concept more into action through the incorporating of physical literacy into all aspects of programming for children and youth. So Pro and Canadian Sport for Life will be hosting these in-person workshops on physical literacy design in Toronto, London, Thunder Bay, Ottawa, and the Niagara region. So those are coming up in the fall. There will also be physical literacy design webinar opportunities in which you can participate as well. So watch out for an email coming out to you all a little bit later on, and these again are happening in the fall in Toronto, London, Thunder Bay, Ottawa, and Niagara region. So that's it
And,
for me. Thanks everybody for today. Yep.
And we just wanted to say that more likely we're going to have Dr. Dean Criars, who is the developer of the Play Tools and really is a master around this, probably doing a couple of the webinars on the physical literacy design piece. So great opportunity to be engaged.
That's awesome. Very cool. Okay, thanks everybody and have a great day. If you have any other questions, feel free to email Drew or I, okay? Thanks so much.